Here is a bar magnet, a north pole, and a south pole. A perfectly ordinary thing. But let me ask a strange question. Can I ever get a north pole all on its own? Snap it in half. You might hope to hold a lonely north in one hand and a lonely south in the other. But you don't. Each piece instantly grows a brand new pair to complete magnets, each with its own north and south. Cut again and again, all the way down to a single atom, and you still find a pair. The lone magnetic pole, the magnetic monopole, simply refuses to appear. Now compare that with electricity. A single positive charge, sitting alone, is the most natural thing in the world. So here is the tension that opens this chapter. Electricity and magnetism look like mirror images of each other, and yet, right here, the mirror is cracked. Maxwell's equations and the magnetism of matter. In this one chapter, two stories meet. First, the whole of electromagnetism collapses into just 4 equations. Then we turn to matter itself and ask why iron is magnetic and you are not. 4 equations above, a sea of tiny atomic magnets below. Let's begin with the crack in the mirror. Sprinkle iron filings near a magnet and the field reveals itself. Lines stream out of the north pole and curve back into the south. Every line that leaves must return because there is no lone pole for them to start or stop on. So draw any closed surface you like, anywhere in the field. Count the lines going in, count the lines coming out, and they are always equal. The net magnetic flux through any closed surface is exactly 0. That is Gauss's law for magnetism. Contrast it with the electric version, where the right-hand side is the enclosed charge over epsilon naught. There can be net electric charge inside a surface, but never a net magnetic charge. That 0 is the crack in the mirror, written as an equation. Back in Faraday's law, a changing magnetic flux induced an electric field. Because symmetry runs so deep here, we should ask the mirror question. Can a changing electric flux induce a magnetic field? It can. Picture a capacitor charging up. Between its circular plates, the electric field is growing. That growing electric flux wraps a magnetic field around itself, circulating loops of B, induced by nothing but a field that won't sit still. The governing rule is Maxwell's law of induction, and it is almost the twin of Faraday's. 2 differences only. The constants mu0 epsilon naught appear, an artifact of our units. And crucially, there is no minus sign. The induced magnetic field circulates the opposite way. Same shape, opposite sign. Keep that little asymmetry in mind, it is exactly what makes light possible. Look again at that charging capacitor, but now from the side. A real current flows along the wire, piles charge onto the left plate, and drains it from the right. But across the gap between the plates, no charge crosses at all. Now here is a beautiful paradox. Ampere's law says the magnetic field around this loop depends on the current piercing any surface that caps it. Cap the loop with a flat disk, and the wire's current pokes straight through it. But I am free to choose a different surface for the very same loop. Let it bulge out and pass right through the gap between the plates. Now no real current pierces it. Same loop, same magnetic field, but 2 answers. Something is missing. Maxwell's repair was inspired. The changing electric flux in the gap acts exactly like a current. He called it the displacement current, a poor name, since nothing is displaced, but we are stuck with it. Picture it as a ghostly continuation of the real current, flowing straight across the gap. And the magic is that the displacement current exactly equals the real current in the wire. So whichever surface you choose, the same current pierces it. The paradox dissolves, and Ampere's law is healed. Add the displacement current to Ampere's law, and the set is complete. 4 equations, Maxwell's equations, hold nearly all of electromagnetism. Let me lay them on a grid that shows their hidden symmetry. 2 columns, laws about flux through a closed surface, and laws about circulation around a closed loop. 2 rows, the electric field on top, the magnetic field below. Watch how the top row reflects into the bottom. Reflect the electric Gauss law, and you almost get the magnetic one, except the enclosed charge becomes zero, because there is no magnetic charge. Reflect Faraday's law, and you get the Ampere-Maxwell law, except the minus sign turns positive. Those are the only 2 places the mirror is imperfect, no magnetic charge, and that flipped sign. And that tiny imperfection is everything. Because a changing electric field makes a magnetic one, and a changing magnetic field makes an electric one, the 2 can chase each other through empty space as light. That's our next chapter. Near its surface, Earth's field is almost exactly that of a giant bar magnet buried at the center, a magnetic dipole, with a moment of about 8 times 10 to the 22 joules per Tesla. But it is tilted, about 11.5 degrees from the axis Earth spins on. To pin down the field at any spot you need 2 angels. The declination is how far the compass points east or west of true north. The inclination, or dip, is how far it tilts below the horizontal. In the far north, the needle points steeply into the ground. And here's a delicious twist of naming. Field lines leave a magnet's north pole, and Earth's lines leave down in the southern hemisphere. So the pole we call the north magnetic pole is, in truth, the south pole of Earth's dipole. The field also drifts, and over geological ages it flips entirely. Earth, a lodestone, a compass needle, all magnets. Which leaves the real question of this chapter's second half. Why is any lump of matter magnetic at all? For that, we go inside to the electrons. Matter is magnetic because of its electrons. An electron circling a nucleus is a tiny loop of current, and every current loop is a magnetic dipole, with a moment pointing along its axis. That's the orbital magnetic moment. The electron carries a second, deeper kind of magnetism, tied to its spin. Spin is purely quantum, you can only ever measure its component along an axis, and that component takes just 2 values, up or down. Measured along the field, that spin moment has a magnitude of exactly 1 bar magneton, 9.27 times 10 to the minus 24 joules per Tesla, the natural unit of atomic magnetism. And placed in a field, a dipole has the orientation energy minus mu dot b lowest when it lines up. That single energy decides how all matter responds. Start with the weakest, most universal kind of magnetism, present in every material there is. In a diamagnetic atom, the electron moments cancel in pairs, so there is no permanent magnet here at all, just a quiet, blank sea. Now switch on an external field, pointing up. By Faraday's and Lenz's laws, the changing flux speeds one electron orbit and slows the other, leaving each atom with a small induced moment pointing against the field. Diamagnetism is the magnetic echo of induced polarization. An induced moment that opposes the field is pushed away from where the field is strongest. The effect is feeble, but in a powerful enough field gradient, even a living frog, diamagnetic like all of us, has been gently levitated, every atom nudged upward until magnetism balances gravity. Step up to paramagnetism. Here each atom keeps a permanent moment of its own. Left alone, they point every which way and shiver with heat, so the whole sample averages to nothing. Switch on a field, and it coaxes them into partial alignment with itself, the exact opposite of diamagnetism. So the sample gains a net moment, and is pulled toward the stronger field. But it is only partial, because thermal kicks keep knocking the arrows loose. Pierre Curie captured it in one tidy law. The magnetization rises with the field and falls with absolute temperature. More field aligns the arrows, more heat scrambles them. It is a contest between the alignment energy, about mu times B, and the thermal energy, about kT, and at room temperature, heat wins easily. Watch what raising the temperature does. The alignment melts straight back into chaos. That temperature in the denominator is the whole personality of paramagnetism. Now the strong, permanent magnetism of iron, cobalt and nickel. A purely quantum effect, exchange coupling, locks neighboring spins rigidly parallel. But a fresh crystal still shows no field, because it splits into domains, blocks that are perfectly aligned inside, yet point in different directions, cancelling overall. Apply a field and the favorably aligned domains grow at the expense of the rest. Plot the iron's magnetism against the applied field, and you get this famous shape, a hysteresis loop. The loop is the key. When the applied field returns to zero, the magnetism does not, the iron remembers. That leftover, permanent magnetization is exactly what a bar magnet is, and exactly how a hard drive stores a bit. Heat iron past its Curie temperature, 1043 Kelvin, and the coupling fails, it becomes merely paramagnetic again. First, that induced magnetic field. Inside the gap, B is 1/2 mu naught epsilon naught times R times the rate the electric field changes. Plug in a field changing at 1.5 times 10 to the 12th, 11 millimeters out, and you get about 9/100ths of a microtesla. Almost nothing, which is why this field is so hard to measure, even though the experiment has been done. It also grows straight in proportion to R, peaking at the plate's edge. Second, Earth's field. A compass reads only the horizontal piece. At a New Hampshire site that's 16 microtesla, with the needle dipping 73 degrees. Since the horizontal component is B times cosine of the dip, the full field is 16 over cosine 73, about 55 microtesla. So at that steep dip, most of Earth's field points straight into the ground, and the true field is over 3 times what a flat compass needle ever feels. So, the whole chapter on to shelves. On top, the 4 Maxwell equations, to about flux, to about circulation, nearly perfect mirror images of each other, electric and magnetic. On the bottom, the 3 families of magnetic matter, decided by a contest between alignment and heat. Dimagnets oppose the field and are pushed away. Paramagnets align weakly and follow Curie's law. And ferromagnets win the contest outright, through domains, and keep a memory of it through hysteresis. And underneath it all run the two ideas we started with. A mirror between electricity and magnetism, cracked in just one place, and below it, a sea of tiny atomic magnets, deciding whether a thing is magnetic at all. And that flipped sign in the mirror. Next time it sets the fields chasing each other across empty space as light itself. Chapter 33, Electromagnetic Waves. If this made Maxwell's equations finally click, subscribe, and I'll see you there.